The worst part wasn't that she read my mind. It was that she smiled. Not shocked. Not offended. Not scandalized. Amused. Deeply, dangerously amused. I froze mid-sentence, my apology hanging in the air like a bad smell. Listen, I didn't mean any of that, I blurted. Those thoughts, they just happen. Automatically. Like sneezes. Or hiccups. Or mental pop-up ads. Her ears twitched. Actual fox ears. Soft, triangular, faintly glowing at the tips. She tilted her head and studied me like I was a strange little puzzle that had just become far more entertaining. You apologized, she said. Yes, I said quickly. Because that was extremely inappropriate. And unfiltered. And you apologized for a thought, she said. Yes. She blinked slowly. Then she grinned. Not a polite smile. Not a friendly one. A knowing one. That is fascinating, she said. I did not like that word. Not in this context. This was supposed to be a disaster. I had mentally prepared for a disaster. I had accepted my fate. I was ready for interstellar prison, social exile, or, at the very least, a lecture from someone with too many tentacles. What I was not prepared for was curiosity, let alone delight. You're not mad? I asked carefully. Why would I be? She replied. Because you just accidentally peeked into the unfiltered brain of a human male who has not had enough sleep, caffeine, or emotional validation. She nodded thoughtfully. Yes, I did. And you are very strange. That at least felt correct. I exhaled. For context, I hadn't planned to meet a mind-reading Vulpine alien today. I was at the station because my transport was delayed, my coffee was cold, and my patience was thin. I'd been sitting on a bench, scrolling through news I didn't care about, when she sat beside me. No warning. No dramatic entrance. Just there. Tall, slender, clearly not human, but also not so alien that I immediately panicked. Her fur was soft copper and white, her eyes bright and sharp, and she wore a sleek, practical-looking outfit that somehow made her look both official and relaxed. I had thought she was just another off-world traveler. Then she had looked at me. And then she had blinked. And then my brain had betrayed me. I felt it before she said anything. A strange sensation. Like pressure behind my eyes. Like someone had gently brushed a finger through my thoughts. I stiffened. She stiffened. We locked eyes. And then she smiled. Oh, she said. That was an accident. What was? I asked, my stomach dropping. I peeked, she said. Into what? Your mind. Everything in me went cold. Everything. You did what? I didn't mean to, she added quickly. Your species has very loud thoughts. That is not comforting. She tilted her head. They broadcast emotionally. That is worse. I jumped to my feet. You can't just read people's minds. She frowned. Why not? Because privacy exists. She considered this. Does it? Yes. Where? In people. She blinked again. Strange place to store it. I rubbed my face. Okay. This is happening. This is real. You're real. I'm not hallucinating. She watched me with clear interest. And then, she said, you thought about me. I froze. In what way? I asked. She smiled wider. That way. I felt my soul exit my body. I'm sorry, I blurted. I am so sorry. That was automatic. I wasn't trying to think it. It just popped up. My brain does that. It's broken. Your brain is very colorful, she said. That is not a compliment. It is on my world. I don't want it to be. She studied me. You feel guilt for imagination. Yes. That must be exhausting. It is. She leaned back slightly, crossing one leg over the other. You did not imagine harm, she said. No, but you did not imagine dominance. No, but you did not imagine control. No, but you imagined curiosity. I hesitated. And confusion, I muttered. And wonder, she added. And a surprising amount of self-criticism. I winced. You saw all that? She nodded. You apologize to yourself often. That sounds bad when you say it like that. You apologize to others for things you have not done. That's also bad. She tapped her chin. Why do you punish yourself for thoughts? Because they're embarrassing. Embarrassment is a choice, she said. Not for humans. She leaned closer. Not flirtatious. Just observant. Do your thoughts always ask permission? She asked. No. Then why must you? I opened my mouth, then closed it, then shrugged. She smiled again. That same maddening grin. You are very honest in your mind, she said, and very dishonest with your mouth. Rude. Accurate. I sank back onto the bench. This is not how my day was supposed to go. She tilted her head. What was it supposed to be? Boring. That is a waste. I glanced at her. She was looking at me like I was a story, not an object, not prey, not even particularly interesting in a dramatic way, just curious. So, I said, you just walk around reading minds? Of course not, she replied. That would be impolite. You literally just did it, by accident. And the smiling, that is on purpose. I groaned. On my world, she said, thoughts are not sins. Must be nice. They are considered weather. Weather. Yes. Sometimes sunny, sometimes strange, sometimes inconvenient, but never immoral. I stared at her. That is wildly different. She nodded. Humans are very dramatic inside. That is not news. She leaned back, tail flicking lazily behind her. You apologized for being curious about me, she said. That is adorable. Stop saying that word. I will not. You're enjoying this. Yes. Why? Because you are apologizing for being alive. That is not a fair way to put it. It is a very human way to do it. I exhaled. You're not offended, I said slowly. No. You're not going to report me. For thinking? Yes. She laughed. Actually laughed. A soft, musical sound. Your species is incredible, she said. That's not what most people say. You imagine entire worlds, she said. You restrain yourselves from them. You fear your own minds. I looked away. That doesn't make us incredible. It makes you powerful. Or broken. Or both, she said cheerfully. I glanced back at her. So you're telling me you read my thoughts and you're not upset? She nodded. And you smiled. Yes. And now you're sitting here, casually dismantling my self-esteem. Yes. Why? She leaned closer again, her eyes bright. Because, she said, you are the most emotionally chaotic being I have encountered today. That is not an achievement. It is to me. I sighed. You're going to keep peeking, aren't you? She smiled. Just a little wider. Only if you keep thinking so loudly. I can't turn that off. Then, she said pleasantly, this will be very fun. I did not like the sound of that. At all. She didn't follow me because she was lost. She followed me because she thought my brain was entertaining. I learned that within the first 5 minutes of trying to leave the station. I stood up, grabbed my bag, and started walking toward the exit like a normal person who had absolutely not just been mentally exposed by a smug fox alien with telepathy. She matched my pace without effort. I sped up. She sped up. I slowed down. She slowed down. I stopped. She stopped. We stood there. I looked at her. She looked at me. Then her mouth curled. That grin again. You are trying to escape, she observed. I am trying to continue living, I corrected. Preferably without dying of shame. Shame is not lethal, she said. It's very close. She stepped closer, head tilted slightly, ears perked like she could hear my thoughts humming. You are thinking about me again, she said. I am literally looking at you. Yes, she replied, delighted. That is why. Stop. I cannot, she said calmly. Your mind keeps volunteering. That is not consent. She blinked. You want me to stop? Yes. She nodded once, serious. Then think quietly. That is not how humans work. Then we will compromise. What does compromise mean to you? She smiled. I peek less. You panic less. That's not a compromise. That's a prophecy. She started walking again.
Come.
I want to observe your species more. I am not a zoo exhibit. You are, she said, matter of fact. But you are also my guide. I did not agree to be your guide. You did not agree to be loud either, she replied, and that was unfairly clever. I grumbled under my breath and kept moving, trying to ignore the heat crawling up my neck every time she glanced at me like she was browsing my brain like a menu. We passed a vendor selling hot drinks. The smell of roasted beans and sweet spice hit me like a memory of comfort, and my body automatically drifted toward it. She drifted with me. I ordered a coffee. She watched intensely. The vendor asked, "Anything else?" I started to say no, but my thoughts, like the traitors they were, flashed an image of her tasting foam from the top of the cup with that smug grin. I winced.
She grinned.
The vendor blinked between us. 2 coffees? No, I said quickly. Just one. She leaned closer and whispered, "You imagined sharing." My ears burned. I imagined nothing. You did, she said, delighted. It was warm. The vendor slid my cup over. I snatched it like it was evidence and turned away. She followed, hands clasped behind her back like a student on a field trip. We reached a quieter corridor near the docking gates. I stopped and turned on her. Okay, we need ground rules. Ground, she repeated.
Yes.
Earth has much of it. Not that. Rules. About the peaking. She nodded, perfectly attentive. I enjoy your rules. Please don't say it like that. She smiled. Like what? Like you're collecting them. I am. I took a breath. 1. You don't read my mind without permission. She blinked. But you do not know when you are. The problem with being followed by a telepathic Vulpine diplomat wasn't the danger. It was the commentary. By the time we got off the transit, my nervous system felt like it had been dragged behind the carriage and politely returned to me in a bag. People moved around us in waves. Workers, travelers, security, vendors yelling about fresh food that had clearly survived at least 2 wars. I kept my head down and tried to walk like I wasn't escorting the galaxy's most smug mind reader through a human district. Narivex walked beside me like she owned the sidewalk. Not arrogant. Not aggressive. Just certain. Like her presence itself was a fact the world should adjust to. You're thinking about whether anyone is staring, she said. I am thinking about how you can apparently hear thoughts like they're a radio station. I cannot hear all minds, she corrected. Only those I touch. I stopped mid-step. Touch. Her ears twitched. Yes. My stomach sank. You touched me? Not physically, she said, amused. Mentally. That is not better. It is, she insisted. It is cleaner. I prefer my privacy dirty and untouched.
She grinned.
You prefer many things dirty. I nearly tripped. Stop weaponizing my own brain against me. I am not weaponizing, she said pleasantly. I am appreciating. You are appreciating loudly. She leaned slightly closer as we walked. You are thinking about appreciation now. I clenched my jaw. Nari. What? I'm setting a new rule. Oh, she said, interested. More rules.
Yes.
Rule 4. You do not describe my thoughts with food words. She blinked. But humans do that. That doesn't mean you should. She considered.
Fine.
I will use art words. That is not an improvement. We reached the elevator that led up to my building. My building, for the record, was not impressive. It was a stack of cheap apartments and questionable wiring above a row of stores that sold everything from used filters to knockoff gravity boots. I lived there because it was affordable.
Barely.
I typed in the code and glanced at her. You can't come up, I said. She looked at me like I'd made a joke. Why? Because I live there. Yes. And you don't. Yet. I stared.
No.
She tilted her head, grin creeping back. You imagined yet first. I muttered something deeply unprofessional and pressed the elevator button. The doors opened. We stepped inside. She stood close enough that I could smell her, something warm and dry, like cedar and spice, like a campfire that had never been mean to anyone. That did not help my focus. The elevator started to rise. I stared at the numbers like they might rescue me. Narivex watched my face. "You are wondering what I will do if you refuse me," she said. "I'm wondering why you're doing any of this at all." Her ears angled forward. "I told you. You told me I'm loud and delicious. That is accurate. That is not a reason." She leaned back against the wall, tail flicking once, thoughtful. "My species is trained to read intent," she said. "We are diplomats, negotiators. We listen for lies." "Congratulations." She looked at me, eyes sharp. "Humans are difficult. Because we lie?" "No," she said. "Because you lie to yourselves." The elevator dinged softly, passing another floor. I didn't respond.
I didn't know how.
She continued anyway. "When I touched your mind," she said, quieter now, "I expected the usual." "The usual?" I asked. "Greed. Hunger.
Control.
Fear disguised as confidence. Desire disguised as entitlement." I swallowed. "And I'm different?" She smiled slightly. Not the teasing grin. Something smaller. "You were embarrassed," she said. "That's not exactly heroic." "It is rare," she replied. "A mind that condemns itself before it harms others." I frowned. "Plenty of humans are awful." "Yes," she said. "But even your awful ones think in layers." "Layers." "Contradiction," she explained. "A desire and an apology living in the same moment. A thought you reject the instant it appears. You are self-correcting." The elevator reached my floor. The doors opened. I stepped out, and she stepped out with me. I turned. "You're still not coming in." She blinked. "I am not trying to enter your den." "Good. I am trying to understand your species." I walked toward my door. She followed at a respectful distance, which felt like progress until I realized she was still following. At my door, I stopped and faced her fully. "Okay," I said. "Explain this. Why are you, an actual diplomat, spending your day bullying one random human with a shame disorder?" Her ears twitched at the phrase shame disorder, like she found it interesting. "You are not random," she said. "That's flattering. It's also wrong." She stepped closer, voice lowering. "Humans," she said, "are classified as mentally destabilizing." I blinked. "That's a category?" "Yes," she said. "You are unpredictable, emotional, rapidly bonded, easily offended, easily inspired. You create cultural incidents without weapons." "That's just called being dramatic." "It is called being dangerous," she corrected. I stared at her. She held my gaze, serious. "The embassy trains us to keep distance," she said. "To avoid deep contact. To avoid imprinting." I frowned. "Imprinting." Her ears dipped. "We are not immune to influence." I didn't like the direction this was going. "And you," I said slowly, "are not keeping distance." "No," she admitted. "Why?" She hesitated. Then her grin returned, smaller, softer, but still sharp. "Because your mind is the first place I have ever felt laughter without cruelty." That hit me in a stupid, vulnerable spot. I cleared my throat. "That's depressing." "It is factual," she replied. I tried to shake it off. "So, you're basically doing research." She nodded. "On me?" "Yes." "That sounds illegal." "It is not illegal," she said. "It is discouraged." Comforting. She looked at my door, then back at me. "May I ask you something?" I sighed. "You're going to anyway." "When you imagine those thoughts," she said carefully, "why did you apologize?" I blinked. Because it had felt obvious. Because it had been automatic. Because it was what I did. But saying it out loud felt different. "I don't know," I said honestly. "Because I didn't want you to think I was that guy." "That guy?" "The guy who thinks he's entitled to people just because his brain is gross." She studied me. "You believe your brain is gross?" Yes. She tilted her head. Why? Because it's messy, I said. Because it thinks things I don't want to think. Because it wants things without asking. Because it's alive, she interrupted. I stopped. She stepped closer, eyes bright. Do you understand what it is like, she asked softly, to have a mind that does not misbehave? I blinked. That sounds nice. It is quiet, she said. It is efficient. And it is lonely. There it was again. That unexpected honesty beneath the teasing. I swallowed. You have people, I said. A whole embassy. I have colleagues, she corrected. We share plans. Protocol. Duty. Not feelings. Her ears twitched. We share feelings in approved ways. I let out a short laugh. That's a terrifying sentence. It is a stable system, she said. But when I touched your mind, it was like stepping into a crowded room full of music. My throat tightened. She smiled slightly, remembering. You think terrible things, she added, eyes gleaming. And then you scold yourself immediately. And then you imagine being better. And then you worry you are lying. And then you try again. That's not music, I muttered. That's mental illness. It is movement, she corrected. It is growth. I didn't know what to do with that. I shifted, uncomfortable. So, what now? I asked. You going to report me as a cultural hazard? She looked almost offended.
No.
Why not? Because, she said, and her grin returned fully. If the council reads your thoughts, they will ban humans from polite space forever. I stared. That's not funny. It is slightly funny, she insisted. Not to me. She leaned closer, voice dropping into something teasing again, as if she sensed I was getting too serious. You're thinking about banning, she murmured. I shut my eyes. Nari. You imagine me enforcing the ban personally, she continued, delighted.
No.
You do, she said. You imagine me saying, you are under arrest for excessive imagination. I glared. Stop. She smiled. Make me. I froze. She froze too, as if she realized how that sounded in a human context. Then she added quickly, too innocently, with words. My face warmed. Her grin sharpened. You see, she said. Double meaning. Humans are talented. I exhaled slowly. You're doing it again. Yes, she admitted. Because you are adorable when you struggle. Stop calling me adorable. I cannot, she said, voice softer. It keeps appearing in my mind when I look at you. I stared at her. Wait, I said carefully. You said you only touch minds when you touch them. Yes. And you're saying thoughts about me are appearing in your mind. She blinked. Once.
Twice.
Her ears twitched, betraying a flicker of unease. That, she said slowly, is unexpected. I felt my stomach drop in a completely new way. You're not just reading me, I said. You're being affected. Her grin faded. Not replaced by fear. By recognition. Humans imprint, she whispered. I don't even know what that means. It means, she said, voice quiet. Your chaos does not stay contained. A door down the hall opened. A neighbor stepped out, glanced at us, then hurried away like he'd stumbled into an awkward private moment. I felt my cheeks burn again. Narivex watched him go, then looked back at me. You worry about perception, she said softly. Even now. Because people judge. Because you judge, she corrected gently. I swallowed. So, what's the embassy going to do if they find out you're touching minds? She hesitated. Then, very carefully, she said, they will remove me from human contact. My chest tightened. That surprised me. I barely knew her. She'd been tormenting me all day. She'd turned my brain into a public comedy show. She'd called my thoughts delicious. She'd nearly caused a small riot on public transit with one sentence. And yet the idea of her being taken away from this connection felt wrong. Not romantic. Not possessive. Just unfinished. Narivex studied my face, and her expression softened in a way that made my stomach flip. You are thinking you will miss me, she said. I am absolutely not.
She grinned again.
Your mind says otherwise. I stared at her, helpless. I don't want you to get in trouble, I said finally. She blinked, surprised by the sincerity. Why? She asked. Because, I muttered. You're not mean. She tilted her head. I have been mean all day. You've been teasing, I corrected. There's a difference. Her ears dipped slightly, like she wasn't used to being categorized kindly. Humans, she murmured. Forgive quickly. No, I said. We just hope quickly. She stared at me. Then her grin returned, gentler now, less predatory, more warm. You're thinking, she whispered, that you want me to peek again. My entire body jolted. That is not true. She leaned in, voice playful but careful. You want to be seen, she said, even when you pretend you do not. I opened my mouth. No words came, because she was right, and that was the worst part. At the end of the corridor, a faint chime echoed, an incoming message tone. Not mine, not human. Narivex's eyes flicked unfocused for a moment, as if listening to something only she could hear. Then her face changed. Not fear.
Duty.
The embassy is calling, she said quietly. My throat tightened again. Are they checking on you? She nodded once. They notice my absence. Because you've been following a random human around. She smiled faintly. Yes. And because you've been touching minds. Her ears twitched. Yes. I swallowed. What happens if they order you back? She looked at me for a long beat. Then she said, softly, with that same dangerous amusement returning at the edges. Then I will have to choose between obedience and curiosity. And as the message tone chimed again, sharper this time, I realized the stakes weren't just about my embarrassment anymore. It was about whether humans were a hazard or a revelation. Narivex didn't answer the embassy call out loud.
She didn't need to.
Her eyes unfocused slightly, pupils narrowing, ears twitching in tiny, precise movements like she was listening to a voice threaded through her bones. Her posture straightened, diplomat poised, and the playful warmth she'd been wearing all day snapped into something crisp. Official. Controlled. The grin didn't vanish. It just sharpened. They want me back, she said quietly. My mouth went dry.
Now.
Yes. Because they noticed you're missing. Yes. And because you've been touching minds. Her ears flicked once. They suspect. I stared at her. You told them? No, she said smoothly. I am not impulsive. I raised an eyebrow. You followed a human around for hours to harvest his embarrassment, she considered. That was strategic. That was chaos. Chaos can be strategic, she replied, and it annoyed me that she sounded like she believed it. The message tone chimed again, harder, more urgent. Narivex exhaled slowly. Then she looked at me with an expression I hadn't seen yet. Not teasing. Not amused. Focused. They will ask questions, she said. You cannot be present. I blinked. Why not? Because your face will make me think, she said. I stared. That's not a real problem. It is, she insisted. You are destabilizing. I scoffed. That sounds like a compliment when you say it like that. It is not intended as one. She turned as if to leave, then paused. Her tail swayed once, slow. Her ears angled back toward me. I will return, she said, and there was something careful in her voice, like she didn't want to promise it too confidently. I nodded, trying to keep my tone casual.
Yeah.
You have duties. She studied my face. You are thinking, she said softly, that you will be relieved. I forced a laugh. I will be. My nervous system needs a vacation. Her grin returned, quietly satisfied. And you are also thinking you will miss me, she added. I opened my mouth, closed it, then muttered. I hate that you know that. You hate it, she agreed. And you like it. I glared. Go. She smiled, then stepped away. I watched her walk down the hallway like she belonged there, like she could turn a cheap human apartment corridor into a diplomatic runway just by existing. When she disappeared around the corner, the air felt emptier. not quieter.
My brain was still a messy storm.
Just less observed. I went inside my apartment and immediately regretted it, because every object in the room reminded me she'd been near it. My couch. My mug. The spot by the window where she'd leaned, purring softly like she'd discovered warmth as a concept. I paced. I tried not to think about her. That lasted 12 seconds. I sat. I stood again. I checked my phone, even though it had no messages. I made coffee I didn't want. I stared at the steam like it would tell me what was happening at the embassy. Then I realized I could do something incredibly stupid, which is, unfortunately, the human specialty. I grabbed my jacket and headed back toward the station. Not to interfere. Not to storm an embassy. Just to be close. Because my brain kept insisting that if she got dragged away from human contact, it would be because of me. Because of my loud, ridiculous thoughts. Because of my apologies. Because of that grin. By the time I reached the embassy district, the sky had darkened and the streets had thinned. Security drones floated overhead like bored metal bees. The alien embassy towered above the plaza, sleek and elegant, its surface shimmering faintly with embedded light patterns that moved like slow breathing. I didn't belong here. I looked like a man who had wandered into the wrong part of a very expensive galaxy. A guard stopped me at the base.
Tall. Vulpine.
Same general species as Narivex, but colder. Eyes like polished amber. Human, the guard said. Yeah, I replied. That's me. You are not authorized. I'm not here to go in. The guard's ears twitched. Then why are you here? I hesitated. Because I'm an idiot. Because someone made me feel seen. Because a telepath grinned at my messy humanity and didn't flinch. I know someone, I said. The guards studied me. Then, unexpectedly, their gaze softened, barely. You are the loud one, they said. My stomach dropped. Excuse me? They stared like it was obvious. You are the human whose mind is difficult to ignore. I covered my face with one hand. That's going to haunt me. The guard's mouth twitched. Not a smile. Almost. They are speaking of you inside. Of course they are, I muttered. Because my thoughts aren't humiliating enough in private. The guard's expression returned to neutral. You cannot enter, they said. But you may wait. Wait for what? For outcomes, the guard replied. That was not reassuring. I stayed anyway. Minutes passed. Then more. I paced near the edge of the plaza, trying to look like I belonged and failing. I watched the embassy lights shift. I listened to distant transit hum. I tried not to imagine Narivex standing in a room full of officials, being questioned, being corrected, being pulled away from humans like we were contagious. My mind ran wild. And then, because the universe loves timing, Narivex stepped out onto the embassy balcony above. Not far. Not close enough to touch. But close enough to see. She leaned on the railing and looked down at the plaza. At me. Our eyes met. Her grin flashed, bright as a warning flare. I froze. She lifted one hand slightly, a tiny gesture like she was acknowledging a fact. Then she disappeared back inside. A moment later, a door opened at ground level. The same guard spoke quietly into a device.
Human, they said.
You will be brought to a small room. You will not speak unless asked. My stomach flipped. I'm being summoned? The guard's ears twitched. Yes. That's why. They wish to examine the destabilization, the guard said, as if that answered everything. It didn't. But I followed anyway because apparently I'd chosen today as the day I stopped making good decisions. The room they brought me into wasn't a prison cell. It wasn't comfortable either. Minimal.
Clean.
A table. 2 chairs. A soft light that made everything feel like a medical appointment. Narivex was there. Standing, arms loosely folded, posture composed. But her tail was still. Her ears were angled slightly back. That was the first time I'd seen her look nervous. She glanced at me, and for the briefest moment, her grin softened into something almost grateful. Then the door opened again, and 3 embassy officials entered. All Vulpine. All older. all sharper. They moved like a coordinated pack. Their presence changed the air. The one in the center, clearly the lead, sat across from me and studied me without blinking.
Human, they said.
You are the contact. I'm a guy, I replied, then immediately regretted it. Narivex's eyes sparkled like she found that funny. The lead official's ears twitched. Your thoughts are undisciplined. That is accurate, I admitted. We have reviewed Narivex's report, the official continued. Narivex's grin returned slightly. I did not file a report, she said. The official's gaze flicked to her. Your absence is a report.
Fair.